Here's a technique for knitting an attractive band onto the cardigan while you're working the sweater front. Let's look at knitting a cardigan band right onto the sweater. In this case, I have elected to knit a seed stitch band. Seed stitch alternates knits and purls both up and down and side to side. So seed stitch is knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, and then the next row you purl the purls and knit the knits. This particular band is 5 stitches wide, but the 5th stitch is right on the edge and makes this beautiful edging. It doesn't really add a full stitch worth of width. And because I know that you're going to want to know what this is, it is very nice yarn. It's Northland Cavern. I got mine at Hirschner's, and it is listed as a number 6 super bulky. To my mind, it's the very low end of number 6 or upper end of number 5. It's certainly bulky, but I don't think it's as thick as some super bulky. It's a roving style yarn, a single, just lightly spun. That means it's not much of a beginner choice because it's a little bit more challenging to keep the yarn from splitting on the pegs and the pins. But it's not a big deal to work with. By the time you've done 2 projects, you could enjoy it too. And I do love the way it knits up. I believe, because I know you're going to want to know this too, that I have 7 washers in there as my spacing to work with this yarn. And of course, you're looking at the Kiss regular gauge. That means you could also get very close to this same gauge on your dragon loom. I just wouldn't have had enough pegs on the dragon. So here we are. I've knitted all the way around, and now I'm coming up from the left, working to the right, and it's time for me to do my band stitches. You do not have to remember a thing. You can look down there and see that that stitch was knitted last time, and the next one was purled. So in this case, I'm going to purl the first one and knit the next one. This is a wonderful time to use my 2-ended hook that I made in another video. You can look it up and make yourself one, because there's only this little bit of purling, and it's so handy to just be able to flip the hook over. My homemade purl hook is not as strong as the big sturdy metal one on a wooden handle made by Kiss, but for 2 or 3 purls per row, it's adequate. So we knitted those first 4 as seed stitch. The edge stitch is always going to be a knit, and going towards the edge, it will always be knitted. So in this case, I've got 2 knit stitches side by side. The light doesn't want to catch them, so I'm twisting and turning in the hopes you can tell. This was purl, knit, knit, knit. Now on my return trip, I am not going to knit this at all. Not knit it, not purl it. And this was a knit stitch last time, so we will purl it. Well, dadgum. Here we go. Dadgum, that's Southern, not quite swearing. You're allowed to say it on the radio. And purl. And then, see what I mean about the tendency to split? I'm working behind the camera, so it's trying to take advantage of me, but it will not win. That's the last stitch of the band. It's a knit stitch on this row. And I just knitted over that knit stitch that I had only wrapped. So when we come back around, of course I'm not ready. I need to knit all the way around my loom. But when I come back, again, on the row going towards the edge, this will be purl, knit, knit. And as I go back, it will be slip, purl, knit, knit. Every time, easy peasy, and it results in the non-roll edging. Now, why doesn't it roll? It's because knit stitches and purl stitches oppose one another in equal number. All knits will roll to one side, all purls will roll to the other, and I can prove that by showing you the other side of this work. There we go. That's absolutely typical. If you make all knit stitches, well, actually, if you make all knit stitches or all purl stitches, it will roll to whatever the purl side is. That's the nature of it on the edges. On the top and bottom, it will roll to whatever the knit side is. And you may sometimes want this, but for the front of this cardigan band, I don't. Other things that would accomplish it are garter stitch. Same thing, alternate knits and purls, but this time row by row. Or ribbing, which is also alternating knits and purls, but only left to right. Seed stitch does both and makes a nice texture. Unlike ribbing and garter stitch, it doesn't pull in either dimension, so you don't lose any width. And even more importantly, any stitch that pulls in also makes the fabric thicker. Working with such a bulky yarn, I don't think that running down the fronts of our bodies, most of us want it to be thicker. So that's hence my choice of seed stitch. I've knitted around and we're back and ready to make the buttonhole. And seeing my hands in here makes me think I should do a little quick disclaimer. I am not the slob it appears. I was working on a knitting machine that was old and got some nasty grime off of it, and it appears to have dyed me. I have, in fact, washed up thoroughly, but this dirt has to wear off, apparently. But it's not going to get on the knitting. That's our main concern. It's soaked into me thoroughly. All right, this is the buttonhole row, and I thought you'd like to see how I do it. There is more than one way. This stitch is normal. It's not involved in the buttonhole. That's the 5th stitch from the edge. This one's knitted. We'll knit it over. This one's purled. And it's the purl stitch that's going to be moved to create the buttonhole, but not until after we've knitted these last two. As usual, coming this direction, we knit the last two. Now I'm going to move the purl stitch, the 3rd stitch from the edge, to the 2nd peg from the edge. Technically speaking, it could also go to the 4th peg instead of the 2nd. However, I have decided that I wanted it where it is because moving it to the 2nd peg, it will be towards the outside of the sweater front and will serve to reinforce the direction that the buttonhole is likely to get pulled on, if at all. This is not a sweater that I would fit tightly, and so it probably won't get pulled on, but still things happen. So we're going to purl those over together. This was a knit stitch. I know this was a purl stitch, but we're going to treat it as though we were working on the knit stitch, and that would be a purl. Now we're going to do something we hardly ever do on the kiss. E-wrap that peg, then purl the next, as usual. And knit the final stitch of the 5. And I will get a buttonhole up here. You won't be able to see this one very well yet. But here's the last one. See the twist where I E-wrapped? That keeps the buttonhole from stretching out as much. You do not have to E-wrap it. I just think that it helps, especially with such a bulky knit. Let's find another one in another color for you to examine. There we go. And you know about what size my fingertip is, so that'll tell you what kind of button you could use. The finger is probably 5/8 of an inch in diameter, and I have enough room you can get a bigger button than that, probably up to an inch. So probably anywhere from 5/8 to an inch will work, because my thumb will fit in there too, but it's getting to be a tight fit. So that's how I decided to make these buttonholes neat and functional.